What if your personal growth is actually the thing that's keeping you stuck? You've read the books, journaled your feelings, pushed through pain, but the loneliness is still clinging to you. Here's the paradox. Self-improvement is often a shield. It's not a salve, because what hurts isn't a lack of effort. It's the wound. It's the wound that no one was ever meant to fix alone. Now, if you were hurt as a kid, if no one came when you cried, if love was mixed with judgment or cruelty or, this is the worst, silence, you may have learned to just go it alone. So when life got hard, you turned inward. You learned to rely on yourself. You got serious about healing. You worked on your mindset, your habits, your goals, all that good stuff. And that work does matter. But if you've done all that and you're still lonely, you're still stuck on the outside of other people's lives, wondering why nothing ever quite clicks, it's not because you haven't healed enough. It's because self-improvement can't fix what trauma damaged in your relationships. So this is the central story of so many of us who grew up neglected or even abused in childhood. I was a little girl who loved my friends. I loved my cousins and my grandparents and everybody who came over to the house I loved. But as my family descended more and more into the alcoholism, that my mom was a very strong alcoholic. My dad was a less strong alcoholic, but a serious one. And they split up, and my mom, opened up the house and turned it into a commune when I was a kid. I lived in Berkeley. This was something that people did then sometimes, but it was total chaos. It wasn't all about peace and love. It was about drugs and drinking pretty much. And there was a lot of fighting, broken glass, shouting, and then just like violations of boundaries and rules, and grown-ups were, doing sexual things on the floor in front of the kids, and it was really a mess. And so my heart really shut down. And I went into a kind of survival mode that was like, have relationships out there with people who can help me and provide food and safety for me at all costs, and then never tell them what's going on at home. And I got picked up by the cops once when I was 6 because they found me alone outside a casino. And I lied. I knew to lie and not tell them what was going on. And to be honest, I don't know if back then the police could have done anything. They didn't used to take kids away so easily. And now, even though they do, it's not always like this great panacea where everything's great after that for anybody. So it's a really difficult situation when you grow up in a trauma house. But survival often depends on putting up a fake version of yourself out there so that people will deal with you and you can get what you need. I had to rely on neighbors to get me to the doctor sometimes when I had, high fevers. I had to rely on them to just teach me basic stuff like how do you bake cookies, how do you sew, how do you ice skate. Like all of that I learned from friends' parents when I managed to tag along on whatever they were doing. There wasn't a lot of that going on in my house because we were very neglected, and that's what neglected. It was on the level of food, actually, but it was also just stuff like nurturing interests or noticing, oh, you had a bad day, or something really scared you last night. Let's talk about it. When you're neglected, you're not getting all of that. You're learning to just deal with it alone, and when you've been going through that, for years and years as a kid, it can be almost like a point of pride that you don't need this person. You don't need anybody. And do you know what an emotional flashback is? So Pete Walker, who's a therapist, he came up with this term in his book, CPTSD, From Surviving to Thriving, a very good book, very important work that he did there, and defined an emotional flashback. It's now considered a symptom, an official symptom of complex PTSD, which also didn't used to have a name until, 15 years ago or a little more. And, but it's one of the things that happens to us where something before we could even speak is remembered, like emotionally, and we end up kind of getting triggered with it and projecting it on whatever's happening in present time. And it can make us be very emotional, not very logical, and it has to do with brain function and things. But the flashback is bringing up this very old feeling of not being okay. And when I have an emotional flashback, that's often I notice that emotional flashbacks kind of have a thing that you're saying to yourself that signals, oh, it's this thing again. And for me, it's when I'm thinking, you know what? I don't need you. I don't need anybody. And it's how I react sometimes when I feel let down or kind of like abandoned with a problem, even though I'm a grown ass woman now with my income and I'm married and I have children. But I know deeply that whatever happens, I can rely on myself now. And I'm grateful for that. But I don't have to most days. But I have this very strong, pioneer girl spirit. Like, I'm going to deal with it. I'm going to deal with it by myself. I'm the only one who knows what to do. And that's a trauma thought. That's an emotional flashback. And it often comes out like an accusation. It's like, you guys, all of you, my sons, my husband, is like, since nobody else is going to do anything around here, I guess I'll just have to do everything. That's an emotional flashback. And it's got a very yucky edge to it. It pushes people away from me when I do that. And so thankfully, I've learned enough about how trauma works, and I've had a chance to deal with my top level trauma symptoms to start to notice some of the more subtle ones, like the way I wake up sometimes just really in a funk going, I have to do everything around here, don't I? And I always tell people, there's a kernel of truth in that. Sometimes when you're the mom, there's a lot of stuff you have to do. But I take it to extremes in my mind. It's a trauma thought. It's a memory that has no memory. There's no visual to it. There's no event with it. But I am not surprised that I would have had experiences of rage and disappointment of not being taken care of as a toddler, before. How old were you in your first memory? I mean, I think I was maybe late 3 or early 4 when I could remember. It has to do with brain development that you can even remember things like that. But your emotions are developing and they're there and they're recording a feeling. So that comes up. It's a great day when you can figure out that some way that you create struggles in your relationships have to do with that, have to do with an old memory coming up. And even when all you have to do is name it, and all of a sudden it deflates quite a bit. And then there's a lot of things you can do. And actually, Pete Walker's book is quite good for that, if you want to check it out. CPTSD, From Surviving to Thriving. It has a whole list of things you can do about an emotional flashback. It's very good. I have a video about that chapter in the book, if you want to search my channel about emotional flashbacks. Did you know that every channel has a search bar? Every channel has a search bar. But so many of us who are trying to manage flashbacks and emotional reactions that push people away, we end up turning to self-improvement. It's all over the internet. It's always like, you can, lift heavy stuff, look at the sun in the morning, have this supplement. All that stuff is very positive. But the thing is, it doesn't fix this thing that I'm talking about, the flashbacks, the emotional wound. The capacity to connect has been injured and needs some serious focus on that. So there's nothing wrong with working on yourself, but there's a reason you can make all this effort and still feel like something's missing. Self-improvement is useful and sometimes necessary for many of us. There are real obstacles in the way. There really are, nutritional obstacles and, getting up and moving every day. And we get dysregulated. We have bad patterns. We have avoidant habits. Those do need attention. But self-work alone isn't the finish line. There's no perfect weight or perfect muscle size or money in the bank that will make up for difficulty around connecting with people and having good relationships. Because the most powerful thing to heal the damage of early trauma it's not just insight, and it's not even self-regulation. Though, again, those are very important. But the most important healing factor is connection. The trauma that hurt you in the first place was by its nature a break in connection, a wound to your ability to connect, relational trauma. That's what it's called. And part of your healing also has to be relational healing. If you feel like your ability to connect is really different than other people's, you could be right. And if you feel like they, all got the memo and you didn't, you don't know what's going on, that's really normal for traumatized people. Feeling inexplicably separate from other people is one of the tells that early trauma may have affected your ability to connect. There are other tells too, and I've got them listed in a free PDF that I will give you for free if you want it. I'll put that in a link down in the very first line of the description section below this video. You know how there's a whole space where there's a lot of text under videos, and people who make videos like me, we put all kinds of goodies in there. I've got many things that you might want, but I reserve those top 2 lines because you can see them without even clicking that more thing to sort of open up the whole description panel to see what's there. Top line, look for it. You'll find it's something called a connection quiz. It's signs that you may have been affected in this way by trauma. So you can go access that right now if you want. It'll be waiting for you while you continue to watch the video, and then you can open it up in your inbox. Connection isn't just the reward for healing. It's part of how you heal. It's the proving ground for the work that you've done on yourself. This is where it matters. And it's the training ground also for the work that still lies ahead. So you grow by practicing closeness. You get better at life by being in it with other people. That's how you find your blind spots and build courage and learn to love in a way that's real, like real love. Real means like when you interrupt someone, you're responsive to that error and you apologize. And sometimes being real means that you cry when you feel embarrassed and you tried not to cry. Sometimes reality does that. And it means you say something that lands wrong with other people and then you fix it. It means you show up to something even though you feel like a weirdo. I do. I feel like a weirdo sometimes. I know a lot of you guys get very upset when I go, you know how when you feel like a weirdo and people are like, how would you call me that? It's like, well, I don't know. I guess I'm in the weirdo club, but that's how I feel sometimes. And I say stuff where I just think, oh, here I go again. But I know what to do. And so that freedom to be real, it means that when someone hugs me and I don't know where to put my arms, I laugh and go, sorry, I don't know where to put my arms. And we both laugh. Or that thing when you hug somebody, like, are you supposed to put your face to the left or to the right? Or like when people kiss cheeks or something. I never know. And I'm socially awkward in those moments. And so I just sort of say something to say, oh gosh, I never know how to do this. And then the whole thing turns into a bonding. It just turns into a way to be closer because I was real. Yeah, I get my nose squished sometimes in hugs that turned out kind of awkward. But I'm real and I'm not performative in those moments. I don't pretend that I'm socially graceful more than I am. And you know what the result is? That I've developed a bit of social grace. Social grace, by the way, is something I go more deeply into in my book Connectability, which you can buy through a link down in the description section. Now, you can read books and you can do breathwork retreats and you can train for a marathon, but none of that is going to teach you how to feel close to people, how to be seen and heard, how to trust, how to belong. Ooh, that's a high bar, right? Belonging. By definition, closeness is not something that you build by yourself. That's something you practice with other people. So how do you start? So first, I recommend you try my daily practice techniques to surface and handle the awkward, shameful feelings that keep you holding yourself apart from other people. And when you can face that, when you can face that fear that you feel, that shame and that guilt, which are forms of resentment, by the way, at yourself, when you can face what comes up emotionally like that, every day, write down your fears and resentments using the language that I teach. I have fear that, I have fear, And then I am resentful at so-and-so because I have fear, Now that's the gist of it. I can't really teach you the whole technique well enough that you know how to do it properly. In this video, it would be like this huge digression. So instead, I have this free course. It's very short. You can go learn how to do it. That is also linked in the description section all the time. And you can just go find that. So just this, what it's about is getting those thoughts that are jammed up in here onto paper and then to either release them, or if you're inclined to believe in a higher power, like I believe in God, I ask for the fears and resentments to be removed. And it's very specific again. And if you were to just like write a bunch of your stuff you're pissed off about on paper, it would probably make you feel worse. So I don't want you to do that and go, this doesn't work for me. As my friend who showed it to me told me, she said, this is the last house on the block. And I was at the end of my block. I didn't know anything else to try. It's more than 30 years ago now. And it saved my life when she showed me how to do this. I had so much pain, so much fear and resentment, thoughts and feelings just so jammed up. I couldn't even think. I was so overwhelmed all the time. So it's more than I can explain here. I have explained it in full detail in the mini course, and also I keep this handy in my book, Re-Regulated. You can get that online anywhere, and it'll teach you how to do it along with my whole philosophy of what trauma does, the dysregulation, the disconnection, the self-defeating behavior, and what to do. Very practical things to do. You know me, it's not very esoteric. It's like, here's what you do. Here's what you do to start feeling better right now. I think that's important. But I'll tell you what, the free course, this is like so easy. You can have it in your hands like right now. I'll put that in the second link down below in the description section. So you'll have that. All right. The quiz on the first link, second link is the free course. So you have that in your hands now. You can learn exactly how to do it. It's deceptively simple. It's pretty simple to do, but you have to do it right. And then the effect of it is very powerful, and you'll only find out what it does for you if you give it a try. Now, when you use the daily practice techniques, you're going to feel a shift. And that's your nervous system re-regulating. That's what I hope it is for you. If you do it right, I think that's what you'll experience. You get those thoughts out and your nervous system has a little space. And the first technique is writing and releasing all that stuff. The second technique that's part of the daily practice is resting your mind in a very simple meditation. So you kind of can't lose both writing, all forms of writing, and meditating, just about all forms of meditating. There's so much evidence that they help with re-regulation. So this is a very good daily practice for you. I recommend you do it twice a day. But I also recommend you learn exactly how to do it because the wording matters. And the reason why the wording matters will be explained to you in either the book or the course. The second thing you can do is take one real world risk for connection. This is like an act of connection, I call it in my book. This is the new book, Connectability. And look, it's all marked up. Sometimes I read to people out of it. And the book is full of a whole series of things you can do to start practicing connection. But there's just these little exercises. It's like a game, and I call them acts of connection. So here's one for you. You can do right now. Call someone you've drifted from. Say the thing that you've been avoiding, like I'm sorry, or I really need your help, or I miss you. And then, offer to show up for that thing, that apology, or the help that they might need. And you can ask for help. You can offer help. You can set a boundary if you need to. Sometimes complicated relationships, part of what let it get so complicated was that you didn't have the right boundaries yet. But this time you can. You can time limit the get together to half an hour, 1 cup of coffee or something. You don't have to go in and say, all right, now we're besties again, and we're just going to spend a whole day together. It's better to just, start slow, titrate, as they say in medicine, a little at a time, especially if you're rusty at this. Allow someone to comfort you. When's the last time you did that? And when you do that, setting boundaries, asking someone to comfort you, could I have a hug? Then notice, take time afterward to notice what comes up, the awkwardness, the panic, the urge to disappear, because all of that is really normal. You might have been through a lot of shame about how you feel when you try to connect with people, and it's probably very stressful. That's part of, having trauma still in your system. It's kind of stressful dealing with people, but that's what it feels like when your nervous system is learning something new. It feels a little awkward. Now, connection is awkward at first, especially if you've been alone a long time, especially if you didn't grow up seeing healthy closeness modeled. But awkward is okay. Awkward means you're doing it. Awkward is where connection begins. It's actually an opening. All right. Third thing is to stop using healing as a way to avoid people or to feel better than them or to, tell yourself that you're doing great stuff. And when you're all there, you've swum to the island of perfect people, then you'll connect. Don't do that to yourself. Self-help can become a hiding place. You keep going to workshops, but you never call your sister. Or you dive into another online course instead of texting your friend back. You change your diet or your routine, your mindset, anything to avoid the risk of being known. If somebody just knowing you, all that stuff, it does feel like progress because to an extent it is progress. We tell ourselves, though, that we need to be ready before we let people in. But readiness isn't the point. Connection happens when you're human. It happens where you are. So for many people, trauma leads to a belief that being alone is the only way to stay in control. You feel exposed around people. You feel like you have to earn love, and it just kind of it makes you dysregulated. So you work harder, you get better, you try to become perfect. But healing isn't about perfection. It's about connection. And the people who are going to love you, by the way, they're not in love with your perfection. In fact, perfect people, do you like them? Nobody really likes people who pretend they're perfect, right? Connection. It's sometimes messy. It's awkward. We're vulnerable. Which is why it's also so powerful. Because when you start letting people see the real you, dysregulation and all, you finally start to heal the real wound. Not just the symptoms, but the wound itself. It's not a sign of failure that you're still lonely. It's a point on the journey, but it's pushing you forward. You're not behind. You're not doing healing wrong. You're just someone who learned to protect yourself by staying apart. Actually, good job. You did protect yourself. You survived. Now you can start to unpack all that and come closer to people, closer to the messy middle of connection, closer to the life that's waiting for you. Now, self-improvement, it's a good thing, but the highest priority is to feel more connected, be more you. And that can start today. Healing happens in connection. It starts with a step. Now you're not alone anymore. And it just became possible for you to go from that step to the next one. And therefore, connection is happening. If you like this video, I've got one that builds on these ideas right here, and I'll see you very soon. It's a telltale sign that listening empathically was not something done enough for you.